all the time. So you're not going to hear from us again for another 4 years, just so you know. Seriously. Anyways, so in the lobby, if you did not see, there's a huge wall, a pallet wall of envelopes. And each envelope has an amount written on it, all the way from $1, starting at $1, up to $70. And so what we are asking is that if you are able to give $10, take the $10 envelope, put $10 in it, and drop it at the Connection Center. Every single amount on those envelopes helps us get closer to our goal. And I will tell you, if we get rid of every single one of those envelopes, it may not seem like a lot. 70 envelopes, $1 up to 70, we will raise almost $2,500. So it is that simple. So even if you can only give $1, any amount helps. Please just consider stopping by there. There's also more information. You will also see just some testimonies from the kids when we were there last time. They were asked to share some things that they experienced while they were there. I pray that you just go there, you check out what those students wrote. I just scanned them, I printed them out. I didn't put your names on them if any of you are here. But those were our students that shared those words, and I just encourage you to support us in that way. If you are a student and you want to go with us, make sure you go grab a form. We did have a meeting earlier this year, so if you already filled out one that you're interested, we'll be in touch. So check that out, and just please be in prayer. Even if you can't give $1, it's okay. Please be in prayer for what God's going to do in this conference and through these students. And we'll also need some chaperones. If you want to go with us, it's in Cincinnati. It's 3 nights, and we're going to get to do some amazing things down there. So consider that. Thank you for listening, and let's get started. All right, so we're in our second week of Get in the Game series. And it's only appropriate, like last week, that we do some sort of game. So I'm looking for 4 people to come up for a game. You won't get messy, and I won't embarrass you. Well, maybe I will. I don't know. 4 people. I need 4 people. I get some adults, too. All right, I got 2 teens. All right, Max and Eli. Kevin, I see your hand up there. All right, Kevin needs a partner. Ed, come on up. All right, so I need 2 of you over here and 2 of you over here. So Max, if you want to tag up with Eli, there we go. And if you guys want to work together. Okay, what I'm going to do is, today the message is about actions speaking louder than words. What game do you think we're going to play? Charades, of course. All right, so what I'm going to do is, so you guys are over here, your team, Eli and Max, all right? You guys are team Ed and Kevin, all right? So what I need you to do, I'm going to tell them what they're going to act out. You guys have to help them figure out what it is, okay? And it is an action. So it's an action. So you'll have to say, what are they doing? Okay? Are you ready? Okay, let me tell you what you're doing. Probably should turn my mic off. You ready? All right. Ready? Okay, I'm going to listen. Try to help me. I might not hear you all, but we'll see who does first. Okay, are you ready? You know what you're going to do? Do it. Go. What did he say? Feeding a baby? Yes, feeding a baby. I knew this might go fast because I know you guys are pretty smart. So we're going to do a couple more. We'll see. So this team has all right, you know what you want to do? Okay, ready, set, go. I think I heard it over here, but I don't know. Anyways, all right, way to go, team Max and Eli. All right, that's all. So if we were going to have a tie, I was going to do a tiebreaker, but anyways. Thank you, guys. Anyways, all right, actions speak louder than words. So last week, Dwayne talked about why we serve. And he said we serve because Jesus first served us. And we don't serve to try to repay him for all that he's done. We serve because we want to be like him. And Dwayne referenced a few verses where Jesus' first response to someone was, "What do you want me to do for you?" And I don't know about you, but that's a loaded question, right? What do you want me to do for you? I have a feeling we don't say that very often, if ever, right? This is a question that is very loaded, and because if we ask somebody that question, it's going to take up some time, it's going to take up some energy, it's going to take maybe some money, it's going to require some action. So what do you want me to do for you? That is a loaded question. And we're busy people, right? We're very busy. So we may not think we have the time or the energy or the money to help someone if we ask them that question. But Jesus said multiple times, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus came to serve, not to be served. Sorry, I have a cold, so I have a little nasally thing going on here. But today I'd like to talk about how serving is missional. Now, typically when you think of being missional, you may instantly think about a mission trip, right? How many of you have been on a mission trip? Quite a few of you. And so you instantly think about, okay, when you have a mission trip, there's a lot of preparation for that, right? You meet for months in advance before you go on that trip. And your team, they met and they prepared for what you were going to be doing there. You talked about how to share your testimony, the purpose of the trip. I'm sure you talked about how are we going to share the gospel. And those meetings were also spent in deep prayer, right? For God to work through each of you for wherever you were going. And typically that mission trip, right, is outside of the country. A lot of times that's what you think about when you hear missional. But have you ever thought about how you can be missional simply by serving right where you're at? Has it ever occurred to you that by serving here on a Sunday morning is actually missional? Maybe you're thinking, that's not missional. Like, it's just serving coffee. It's just John singing up here. It's the tech booth up there doing their technology thing, It's just shaking hands. That is not missional. But if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you will see that when we serve, it really is missional. We do not have to go outside of this country, outside of this town, or even outside of this building to be missional. We don't have to be. God created the church to be a gathering of people who come together to be accountable, to learn about Him, to grow in His Word, and then to go out and serve those in need and share the good news, to share the gospel. You've probably heard this before, but we don't go to church. We are the church. I know you guys are so smart. The church is the people, okay? This is simply a building where we meet, where the church meets. I know we're all guilty of saying, hurry up, we've got to get to church. You know what I mean? And really, we know what we mean. Hopefully we know what we mean. It's not a place we go. It's something that we are. I was listening to a message by Craig Rochelle. He's a pastor of a mega church down south called Life Church. And he says this. He said, God's highest calling for us wasn't to go to church, but to be conformed to the image of Christ. Going to church wasn't one of the 10 commandments. Go to church. It wasn't, it's not part of the Beatitudes or in any of Jesus's messages. He didn't say, make sure you go to church. He did not say that. It is to be conformed to the image of Christ. And we need help with that, right? We need help. We need to work together. We need accountability. We need people that are loving us and showing us what that looks like. And to be the image of Christ, we have to be a person who loves, who serves, and a person whose actions reflect the image of Christ. If I were to ask each of you individually if all of your actions reflected the image of Christ, what would you say? I'm not going to ask you. You're off the hook. That is for you and God to talk about. What would you say? I mean, it's just a thought to ponder. Would all of my actions throughout the week, when I leave this building, do those actions reflect the image of Christ? We all agree that actions speak louder than words, right? Words are very important, absolutely, but actions speak louder than words. For example, if I tell my husband I love him, but I don't back up my words with action of loving, actions, then he's not going to believe me, right? He's not going to believe me. When you love someone or love something, there are actions that reveal that reflect that. And so if you tell someone you're a follower of Christ, would they believe you based on your actions? Would they? I hope they would. Last week, Dwayne asked the question, what if there was another way to look at evangelism? And if you're like me, I didn't grow up in the church. Evangelism is a churchy word, and I wouldn't have known a long time ago what that was, so I don't want to assume everyone knows. But evangelism means to share the gospel with others, to tell how God has intersected our life and how that could impact theirs. And typically we think of TV evangelists, right? When we hear evangelism, I mean, that's what I think about. And if I've watched any TV evangelists, I'm like, they're these gray-haired dudes. No offense, Mr. Ed, love you. Gray-haired dudes in a tidy suit, and they're up there, and they're speaking these eloquent words, and you can tell they're really good salesmen, and everybody's getting on board, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's not for me. Nope, evangelism isn't my gift, so nope. But that's actually not what evangelism is. It doesn't have to be those eloquent words. I don't know about you, but I'm a horrible salesperson. I won't sell you anything. I don't like bugging people about stuff. And so I'm like, nope, that's not me. But if you're a Christ follower, you are called to evangelize, to share the gospel with those who don't know it. You're called to make disciples. But what if there was an easier way? Yes, our words are still very important. But what if by your actions that people already knew what you believed and that you had a faith in a God that was so good that they could be a part of that as well? What if that was the case? Even Jesus, like this is so revealing to me as I was preparing this week. Even Jesus knew his words were not going to be enough to convince people. He didn't. I've never remembered reading this verse, and it just stuck out at me. And so I'm going to be in John chapter 10 for a minute, verse 25, if you want to get your apps out or get your Bibles open. And you might want to underline this, because I had to. But basically, the Jews had been asking Jesus. They said, how long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly. If you're the Messiah, tell us plainly. And this is how Jesus replied, and this is going to be up on the screen as well. I did tell you, but you do not believe. The works I do in my Father's name testify about me. Jesus talked a whole lot about the kingdom, right? But what probably convinced most people to become a part of that kingdom were a direct result of his actions. The miracles, the mercy, the forgiveness, the love, the care, the sympathy. These actions backed up his words. And that's what inspired others to change and to choose to follow him. A few chapters later, Jesus says in John 13:35, by this, all men will know you are my disciples, if you love one another. We just talked about that. If you love someone, it's backed up with action. You can't just say you love someone and then not show it. That is not love. Do you love coming here every Sunday? I know a lot of you, so I know you've been coming back. I know you keep coming back, and I'm assuming you love it here. Otherwise, why would you keep coming? I don't know. Do you love what you get from coming here? Do you love the people here? Do you love how we love our community? Do you love how we accept anyone who walks in these doors? Do you love that we admit we're broken and that we need Jesus? Even those of us who stand up here, I am not perfect. And that's what I used to think when I went to church, is that the pastor had to be perfect. And I was never going to measure up to that, so why even try? Do you love that we just all admit that we are broken people and we need Jesus? Because if you love it here, we want you a part of the things around here. Not because we want the name of Epic glorified. That has never been the case. It's because we want the name of Jesus glorified. We are the church. Our actions of serving and loving speak volumes above lip service. We don't need you to serve here. Sometimes I feel like we are guilty of saying, we need people. You'll see an email if you're on a team. We need somebody to come serve this weekend. We need somebody in Wild Kids. We need somebody here. We actually probably should think about that before we say, we don't need you here. We actually want you here to serve because of many reasons. Because we've already experienced what it's like to be a part of a church family. We already know how deep friendships can be formed. We already know how being intentional with our time and sacrificing our time on Sunday mornings makes us feel valued and needed. And we already know what it feels like to belong to something that has changed our life. We know. It's the church. That's the testimony of someone who serves. That's missional when people see us honoring God with our lives, with our actions. Jesus didn't preach the gospel just verbally. His actions backed up his message. He lived it, he sacrificed for it, and he died for it. When you serve others, you serve God. Amen. Thank you. Amen. I want to read a verse in Psalm chapter 92, starting in verse 12. It says, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God." The key part of this verse that I want to hone in on is planted in the house of the Lord. Do you feel like you are planted here at Epic Church? I mean, we talk about church planting a lot, and that means sending you out. But do you feel like you are planted here? Because someone that is planted in the house of the Lord flourishes. Would you say that you're flourishing? Some people might, but a lot of people might say, I am not flourishing. A seed that is planted and nourished is useful and flourishes. The verse mentions like a palm tree. A palm tree is very tall, and it lives a very long time. And the verse also mentions cedar. The cedars of Lebanon grew to 120 feet and up to 30 feet in circumference. When you're planted firmly in the church, this is what your life looks like. We want you to be a part of that. Wouldn't you want to be a part of that? Who wouldn't want to be a part of that support and that strength? If you're here today and you're not a part of things, you're seed, waiting to be nourished, waiting to flourish. And it's your choice if you're going to choose to water that seed and become a part of the flourishing part of the house of the Lord. When you are planted firmly, your roots grow deep, right? And when your roots are deep, you've got amazing relationships. You've got purpose. You know what your purpose is, what God has called you to do. You have prayer. People are praying for you. And you have support like you have never had support before. And when those storms come, because we know the storms are going to come, we know, then you aren't going to be destroyed because you are firmly planted. You may bend, but you won't break. Serving is not something we want from you. It's something we want for you. So maybe it's time, if you're not in the game, so to speak, if you're not firmly planted here and a part of the house of the Lord and flourishing, we ask you to just pray about what that looks like. So where do you begin? You're thinking, oh gosh, here's the big ask. They're going to be like, where do you want to sign up? That's not what I'm asking today. What I'm asking today is that you would talk to God about that over the next week. That you would really ask God, like, Lord, am I planted here? Is this where you want me? Is this where you want me to serve? You created the church. Obviously, you think this is good. You created this gathering of people that I really want to be a part of, and I maybe haven't felt that. And so I want you to ask and spend some time with God this week and ask about that. Ask God, what do you want me to do for you, Lord? What do you want me to do for you? Because we already know what Jesus has done for us, right? We already know the sacrifice that God made for us when he sent his son to die for our sins. So ask him, what do you want me to do for you? And then I want you to come back next week as we wrap up this series. And I want you to just, we're going to talk about the answer to that question. But before I wrap up, I want to share a story with you. It's about a woman who started attending Epic Church way back when we first launched in 2006. This woman had never attended church for any length of time her whole life. She had no idea how much God loved her. She had no clue of the sacrifice that Jesus made for her. Someone asked her one day, would she serve in the cafe on Sunday mornings? She thought, sure, why not? she can serve on Sunday mornings. That's easy enough. She likes to help people. So she began serving in the cafe. Little did she know the deep friendships she would develop. Little did she know how much support she would receive from others during hard times. Little did she know how much she would learn about a God who accepted her right where she was at and loved her despite everything. Little did she know how many people she would encounter that she would be able to serve and to help. Little did she know she would choose to surrender her life and get baptized. And little did she know that 13 years later, she would be up here speaking in front of all of you. Yes, that woman was me, and that woman is me. You never know how God is going to use you by simply one little act of obedience. Now, I don't want to scare you off. I'm not saying in 13 years, if you start serving in the cafe, you're going to be up here speaking. Maybe that's God's plan for you, but that was God's plan for me, okay? That's not necessarily God's plan for you. So don't freak out about that, okay? Because if you would have told me that, I'd be like, oh, no. Because we don't really want to know what God has planned for us, right? Because we probably wouldn't. We would do whatever we can to flounder that. But that was God's journey for me. But I can tell you that one simple act of obedience, of stepping into a role of just serving around here and becoming a part of a church family, can change your life. And it can change the life of your family, of your marriage, of those you encounter, of your community. You have no idea how much God can do when you just take that step of obedience. And I just ask you to pray about that this week. If you're not already in the game, I pray you consider getting in the game. And on that note, I want to pray for all of us. Father, I just thank you so much. I thank you so much for how you take nobodies, like that initial song that we heard this morning, and make us somebodies because of what you've done for us. We are just nobodies. We feel like that sometimes. Maybe we feel like we don't belong, we don't have value, we don't have purpose. And how could a God use us in that state? But Father, I know you can, and I'm testifying to that today. And I believe you can do that in every single person that's sitting here today. I know that because I've seen it. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in other people's lives, and I can just speak to that because of what I've seen. And Father, I just pray that every single person here, that whatever that next step is, a lot of you already serve. We know that, and thank you so much for that, for making this church an amazing place to just grow in you and to learn from you. But if you are on that edge and you're like, I'm not sure if I'm planted here, I'm not really sure, Father, I pray that you just speak to them clearly over the next week, and you just give them courage to step over that line, to say, yeah, I want to be a part of something bigger. She talks about having support and love and prayer, and just that sounds like something I need right now in my life, and I pray that if that's you, that you just take that step today. That you would come back next week, find out, what does that look like for me?